Night racing is awesome. August 9th, 2024, we're at Rad Torque Raceway here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. This is my home track, 25 minutes from my front door, and it is a very big 3/8 of a mile dirt oval. Hard to tell from the spectator side of things, but the track indeed has progressive banking, and up until 2014, this place is on the World of Outlaws schedule. Track has dried out, so we've got BF Goodrich radial TAs on all four corners of the car, and while it's a light field at 11 cars, these are all the hitter cars in this region. I think we're only missing the 55 Fox Body Mustang, who I believe had engine problems tonight. This is a professional dirt racing facility, so we have so much room to work with that we can treat this as a NASCAR speedway race. As we go into one, I'm not even trying to attempt to run any sort of best line. I'm just driving with respect to the cars around me and making sure I give everyone about half a car width to work with. Turn 3 of lap 1 was where the actual game plan comes into play. As I mentioned in the intro, this track has very noticeable progressive banking. For any of the iRacing crowd watching this track drives almost identical to Homestead Miami Speedway, in which the preferred line is about 2.5 car widths above the apron. And my goal as a driver throughout the entire race is to drive in a way that protects my presence on this optimal line. What I've noticed trying to run the bottom here at Rad Torque is that yes, you initially gain on corner entry, but because the progressive banking transition is so extreme, that on corner exit you actually lose anywhere from 2 to 3 car lengths by the end of the next straight. So if there's a slower car in front of you and you want to get around them, it's actually smart to instead sit behind them instead of attempting to pass them on the bottom, which you'll see I try and do here on my buddy Nick. I very clearly gain on entry, but the car essentially stalls out and Nick gains it all back on corner exit. The only reason I make a second attempt on going low around Nick here is because I thought I could out-drag him, but I was clearly proven otherwise. As a driver, you have to learn to abandon ideas that don't work quickly. So my goal goes back to protecting my spot on this preferred line. Nick's car lacks top end. I don't want to give up my spot on the preferred line, nor do I want to give up the momentum I've built in the motor off the corner, so my solution is to slam into the back of the guy. Again, this is not redneck hick racing, that was a genuine solution to a problem I was faced with. The car in front of me was a bit slow, but I was otherwise happy where I was, so let's give him a shot. This was a bit dumb though. This is close to a Ricky Stenhouse moment. I really wanted to set the tone early in the race with a ballsy slide job going into 3, but I pulled out a line like a cunt hair too late and ended up clipping his rear. Thankfully this isn't sim racing though, so this didn't result in some sort of netcode disaster. We've got the 55T of Cole Tom poking his nose in on the bottom here, but as I outlined in the intro, the progressive banking transition is so extreme that you lose everything on corner exit. In fact, we're now seeing the inverse dynamic play out. Because of the progressive banking, you end up fighting over who can be the highest. So running this irresponsibly close to the front stretch wall is actually ideal. It reminds me of what the Cup guys were doing at the reconfigured Bristol. Speaking of Cup guys, this is my second Stenhouse moment of the race. But that kind of moment right there just goes to show you how different real life is compared to some racing sims. Real cars are forgiving and have a certain flow to them where even if Austin Ognowski is trying to drive through you because his mom's in the grandstands, it's not the end of the world. Anyway, we're under yellow. Let's actually watch that from the stands again because I happen to have that footage. The way my helmet cam is mounted, it kind of blocks whatever's to the left of me, but we were 3 wide the whole time. And this kind of demonstrates what I was talking about a lap ago. You end up fighting over who can be the highest entering the corner. Now, Nick's save is wild on its own, but it's what he does afterwards that's arguably more impressive. He uses the inertia of the car slaloming to load up the outside tires and attempt a crossover move on the race leader. He doesn't have the power plant that the J-bodies do, so he only gets to Terry's back bumper, but what the fuck? Probably a good thing they threw the yellow because a couple more laps of that and someone was going to wind up in the wall. Alright, let's devise a restart strategy here. Every track we race at has different restart rules. Rad Torque Raceway does World of Outlaws style. This actually tips the scales in favor of the race leader here, because you're essentially not allowed to make a move on the guy in front of you until you pass the start-finish line. A perfect restart means hitting the back bumper of the car in front. Because these cars take so long to build revs, it almost guarantees that nothing is going to happen to your track position going into turn 1. Hence why I say this restart type favors the leader. So your goal as a car second on back is basically to time your throttle application, so you're hitting the guy's rear bumper as you pass under the flag stand. So here we go, green flag's back out. I was close but kinda off the mark. I was about a quarter of a car length away from my target. Drove it in about a car length deeper into the turn 1 braking zone because we're not quite at race speed yet. And immediately we are back to the game plan of fighting for the highest line possible. Now, what you're going to see over the course of this stint is some kind of interesting. Not everyone is protecting the top like they should. Why do I have what seems to be free real estate up here? Well, there's a reason for that. Inside any race car, whether it be a Sport Compact, whether it be a GT3 car, whether it be a late model, sometimes the quickest line feels slower. Sometimes backing up your braking points and rolling the corner feels counterintuitive. Slide jobs don't feel wrong though, they're always fun. Pretty sure I have external footage of this. Hey, I do. So this is going to show how drastic the effects of progressive banking could be on a sport compact. I'm entering the corner about a car length and a half behind the 55 car, but him merely hitting some kind of bump and unsettling the car, I end up with a net gain of +2 car lengths as we drag race down the next straight. Same thing with the red 17 to Terry Bedford. I enter about a car length behind him, but he stalls out the car and gets a bit of an oscillation going, and we exit +2. And then as I perform the slide job on my buddy Nick, look how much speed I scrub off. We enter the corner +1, he exits even with us. So as a driver, when you run at tracks with progressive banking, almost the entire race you have to be cognizant of the fact that you cannot give up the line that builds the most momentum in the motor, because you will start losing tenths upon tenths on your delta every single lap. Especially at this level, you are also not racing against professional drivers. You're racing against a mix of hobbyists and sim racing nerds, so you may be missing out on free track position by opting to just take the shortest way around the track. And on the contrary, if you yourself know that you're driving a car that's a little bit underpowered, those are free spots that you can have and keep yourself either in the points hunt or the hunt for a trophy or a bunch of money just by keeping the motor wound up. And as we discussed in my previous video, this has an added bonus of saving the fuck out of your tires. Remember, you are taking a wider turning radius and you're taking basically a different line around the track than everyone else is. Your right front tire is not going to be as stressed as everyone else's because you're not using as much wheel input. So that's why I don't ever switch to a qualifying line, even when I'm out front. In fact, I'm so obsessed with trying to save tires when I'm in this state that even when I come up on a lap car right here, I stay completely glued to this high line until it's almost impractical for me to do so because I almost run into the lap car, because I just know how important it is to protect that right front tire at all costs and keep revs built in the motor. And this motor is absolutely fucking screaming right now. You've probably noticed this throughout the course of the race, but I do run a DigiDash on my car. This is not a fancy Longacre set of gauges. This is an Amazon Fire Tablet 6 with the VPeak OBD2 reader. You'll see the little brick with a little blue light on it in the center of my dash. And I'm using the OBD Fusion app that's available on the Amazon Marketplace. This allows you to have completely custom gauges. You can set your own idiot lights, your own layout, everything. It's just like a racing sim. Take the 10 minutes to set this up. I have the RPM gauge set to flash blue whenever I'm in the direct power band. I want to say it's 5,000 RPM and above, and therefore my goal as a driver is basically to see blue for as much of the lap as possible, if not the entire lap. Red, I think, is 7850. My poor motor. Anyway, lap car. What do we do? Because I've built up a gap to the pack behind me from running the momentum line for a couple of laps, I can get around this guy safely and waste a bit of time knowing that I've got a cushion to work with. Now, coming out of turn 2, we're going to receive news that someone's been selected for the space program. There is a car upside down on the front stretch, so we are going to get the red flag. Not only is Thomas fine, he's actually going to get the car fixed for tomorrow, but usually at any amateur dirt track, if a car's upside down, it's an automatic red, just so all the safety workers can get there, so we're going to park the car on the banking, and we're going to leave this thing running. This is a 20-year-old Chevy Cavalier from Bow Island, Alberta, and the track's been a little bumpy tonight. You never know what got wiggled loose. Not only has Thomas's wreck been cleaned up, but it's also been a bit of a war of attrition night. A lot of cars that started the race are no longer running. It's now a showdown between myself and Terry Bedford, who, for all intents and purposes, is driving the same car as me. The guy built my car also built Terry's car. They've gone a little bit of a different direction with their tire choice and their ECU choice. I believe they don't run an aftermarket ECU, so they run bigger tires to keep the revs down and in the power band. And in following him, I like the way his car is able to enter the corner. It seems like he carries a lot more speed on entry. And it's also not as prone to getting bogged down in wet surface stuff when we run the heat races. But I've always wondered if that affects the roll center a little too much. I feel like if I'm able to at least set the nose with the car in the braking zone, having the front end that close to the ground gives me really predictable drive off. Whereas it seems like the 17, as he transitions through the center of the corner and on exit, it's like he loses the nose all the time. The nose might be somewhat too high in the air to really effectively plant the tires into the ground, and he just loses a bit of drive off. Or in front wheel drive speak, it's just understeering a shitload. Let's zoom in a bit here and see what happens. Yeah, he's copying my line. He's not doing anything wrong, and it's just like the right front doesn't load up. You tend to find interesting stuff like this all the time when watching spectator footage, and you know, you'll come across like tens of thousands of like amateur racing clips like this all over YouTube, with like 100 views and maybe 2 comments on them just from random short tracks all over the place. I can guarantee you like 85 of those 100 views are like the top 3 drivers in that race going through that shit frame by frame to see if they can find anything. That's why this like fan side footage is always really valuable to us. So if you do go to an amateur track, please take out your cell phone and please record the races. We really, really appreciate it. 2 to go at the line, and we're in a good position. Terry's high center of gravity, as he's turning lap after lap after lap, because it's not distributing the load evenly on the front tires, he's actually nuking the right front, and the car's starting to push a little more on corner exit every corner. So as we take the white here, he's really not in it. The biggest threat right now is a car that's going to come into frame here in about 2 seconds. We have a man on fire in front of us. This race has had everything. I'm immensely entertained. We've had Stenhouse moments, we've had tandem drafting, we've had people upside down, we have a car on fire. It's great. This was just a ruptured fuel line. It wasn't leaking anything onto the track, it was just igniting, and it looked cool. But it's still a good idea, even in those moments, to just play it safe. Just give the guy a shitload of room. And just like that, we come across the line to take the checkered flag and the yellow flag at the same time. I'm stoked to have all this B-roll footage. This is really neat. Thanks, Mom. But yeah, that's another plastic trophy.